The Silentium PC and their new SPC gear division that sells gaming products has shaken the market in many ways, offering good products at an affordable price. The today's review features the SPC gear GK550 Omnis Kailh Red RGB gaming keyboard. This particular keyboard has an average price of around $70 or euros depending on where you get it from. The GK550 Omnis featured in this particular review uses the Kailh Red mechanical switches, which are close in performance with the Cherry MX Red switches. In addition, the Omnis comes equipped with a detachable wrist rest and full NK rollover, plus plenty of RGB integration and macros. We start the review with the packaging, something that many brands cheap out on, but not SPC gear, as the GK Omnis is protected by soft foam pads on the sides and a soft foam bag for all the surfaces. The box is made from cardboard and offers decent protection, but don't get your hopes up if you want to drop the box with the keyboard inside. The Omnis has a standard format with a total of 104 keys and switches. It also has a complete numpad section and status LEDs available. Speaking of the LEDs, the status LEDs are white and very easy to see, and are located in the classic location, the upper right corner of the keyboard. Next to them, there is a really nicely made SPC gear logo painted in white over the surface of the keyboard. Speaking of the surface, this is solid metal, aluminum to be specific, that covers the entire surface of the keyboard, while the sides and the underside of the Omnis are made from plastic. There are some subtle design elements meant to highlight and enhance the aluminum plate of the keyboard. These are in the shape of two polished edges on the keyboard, one found on the lower side while the other one is above the SPC gear logo at the top. Also, a metallic plate applied under the switches offers great protection for the PCB of the keyboard and also drastically increases the overall stability and sturdiness of the keyboard. The Omnis is available with 3 different Kailh switches options: blue, brown, and the one featured in this review, red. Speaking of the switches, here is a noise sample of how they sound like in a quiet room. The wrist rest is detachable and uses a magnetic system to remain attached to the body of the keyboard. In addition, there are rubber pads on the underside of the wrist rest to provide better grip and also to prevent any scratches on the surface the keyboard sits on. The other set of rubber pads is placed on the edge, the same side that makes the contact with the keyboard. This is not only to provide a good contact base for the keyboard and wrist rest to have in between them, but also it eliminates the obnoxious noise of the magnets making contact with the plastic body of the keyboard. In terms of the ergonomics, the wrist rest does its job great and has a texture that again provides more grip to your hands when using the keyboard. The cable of the keyboard is flexible and plenty long, with a total length of 1.8 meters. It is also covered in braided sleeving that is black and uses a single USB 2.0 connector that is also gold-plated for increased reliability and also for that little bit more of a design for the whole keyboard. In addition, the connector has a captive rubber cap to prevent dust from settling down inside the USB connector surface. This may not look like much, but it is a great thing to have, especially when you want to clean your keyboard and all the dust that you moved from in between the keycaps is now getting everywhere, including inside that USB connector. So preventing that from happening in the first place is a welcomed addition. The underside of the Omnis is fairly simple, but it has a design to it meant to replicate the overall design theme used by the packaging and other SPC gear keyboards. In the middle, towards the right, there is a label which contains the complete product name alongside the serial number for the keyboard. There are also some goodies here, including a pre-installed keycap remover, which you can remove from the case, no pun intended, by sliding it towards the left of the keyboard. Then we get to see the base of the keyboard, which is composed out of 4 rubber pads placed strategically in each corner of the Omnis. Still at the base of the keyboard, the 2 feet are adjustable but only have one level of adjustment apart from being fully retracted. So with the Omnis you either have flat on the ground or elevated at the back. The good thing about these feet is that they too have integrated rubber pads placed on them, which again prevents scratches, but more importantly increases the grip of the keyboard, because the last thing you'd want in your life is a keyboard that slides around on your desk, especially when gaming and especially when you're losing that game. The GK550 Omnis does have plenty of macro support and integrated multimedia buttons, but no dedicated buttons for anything. The multimedia switches are placed in the usual top F key row. The multimedia keys go from F1 all the way through to F11, and these include the functions opening up a new computer tab, the default browser, the calculator, the default music player, next track, previous track, play, pause, stop, mute, volume down, and of course volume up. There are also some different keyboard shortcuts found on the key row above the arrows, which when pressed with the function key, they select and cycle through the pre-installed light patterns. Also, the main RGB controls are integrated within the arrow keys. Quite a lot to remember for just a keyboard. Disassembling of this keyboard is complex, as you need to first remove all the keycaps from the switches and then remove no less than 16 small screws found all around the keyboard. These screws are also quite soft, so be gentle with them unless you want to round them up and then cause yourself a massive headache. With the screws removed, the underside of the keyboard should separate itself easily from the rest of the keyboard, and then you get to see the exposed PCB of the Omnis. The beating heart of the GK550 Omnis is the Vision VS11K09A. It is a microcontroller that has been used before in plenty of keyboards from mid-range to cheap models. Unfortunately, I am still unable to find any details about this chip apart from its manufacturer. There is also a smaller chip also made by Vision with the model number VS01, which is most likely the main LED controller of the keyboard. And that's pretty much it in terms of chips. Other features of this keyboard include the soldering quality on the PCB, which is very good, and the LEDs on the side, which are all SMD types. Another thing to note about the PCB and this keyboard is how the cable is connected to the rest of the keyboard. While other models have the cable soldered directly to the PCB, the Omnis has its cable ending in a connector which hooks up to 4 pins on the PCB. Another good thing to see in the construction of the cable is that it is attached to the underside of the keyboard with a clamp and 2 metallic screws. So the chance of pulling the cable and damaging the PCB header or the pins is almost non-existent. This level of attention to details is expected from big brands and top-of-the-line gaming keyboards. However, here we are with the GK550 Omnis. The software is pretty nice with a simple and easy to understand layout. The software of the Omnis allows for complete backlight control, changing the pulling rate, profile selection, assigning other functions to any button, creation of macros, and that's it. The software itself is also very fast and takes up a small amount of space. And also it is very easy on your RAM, which is an important thing, especially today when a browser can take up more than 5 GB of RAM. Ask me how I know. The Omnis has both the option of N-key rollover and the option of 6-key rollover. The N-key rollover is easy to understand. You can basically press as many keys as you want at the same time and all of them will be registered by the system. However, if the 6-key rollover is activated, only a maximum of 6 keys pressed at the same time will be registered. Why would you even want this? Well, in some cases, either BIOS or other operating system, the key presses will not be recognized at all in 8-key rollover mode. Thus, you have to switch to 6-key rollover mode and do your business. Again, it isn't much and many will overlook this feature, but when you will need it, you will start to appreciate it. Also, using the software Aquas test, we are able to determine that the N-key rollover feature is working as it should. The RGB integration is done very well. Each key and mechanical switch benefit from individual illumination from a single LED integrated within the transparent case of the mechanical switch. There are plenty of modes and lights to choose from which are already pre-installed on the onboard memory of the keyboard. One thing to note here is that I would have liked to see the LEDs have a bit more brightness to them. However, that's really just me and someone else might just dim them down even more. The SPC Gear GK550 Omnis is a very good keyboard. It is solid, thanks to the metal plate that covers the PCB and holds together the mechanical switches. In addition, the plastic components of the keyboard, such as the underside or the wrist rest, are done with good quality plastic that should not break at the first sign of pressure. The Kailh red switches are doing their job, and it is pretty clear that the quality of the Kailh switches in general has increased among the years. The RGB illumination has 18 different modes by default stored on the onboard memory of the keyboard, and that's quite a lot to choose from, so as they say, it should have something for everyone. The price is another thing altogether. At $70 or euros, it is not exactly the cheapest keyboard in the country, but it is not that expensive either, especially when compared with the top brands and their flagship keyboards that can go overboard in terms of pricing. And a too long didn't watch for those that really didn't bother to watch, the SPC Gear GK550 Omnis Kailh Red RGB is a solid keyboard with a good build quality and a metal plate on the front. There is plenty of RGB illumination available and has NK rollover and 6K rollover available among plenty other features. If you like this review, then you can perhaps consider subscribing for more, and also if you want to support the channel in a direct way, then in the description below you will find both the subscriber star and Patreon pages for this channel. And remember, you're not paying me really, you're paying the equipment and time spent testing stuff.